Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is our second online event, and it's the first one in the series of artist talks that we are having here in the framework of the Voids 2021 project. Tonight, one of the first artists who is going to start with this event is Tanja Deman. And she's one of the artists who is using one of these spaces in the historical city of Split as her studio. So I would just like to remind you that we are going to have more of these kinds of events. And if you want to know more about the Voids project, I invite you to visit our website where you can find everything about the project, but also the calendar in which you can see all the events that we are having in these 3 weeks of the project that we are doing in Split. We are very happy that we can host several artists coming not only from Croatia, but also from the region. And we are going to have talks with them, with each of them. This year we are doing it online. We are streaming on Facebook. Also, we are registering this call, so it's going to be available later on YouTube. But we are also streaming it on a screen in Dominisova 3, so the people who are passing by, they can see also the talk from the street itself. I would also like to remind you that you can visit the website to get all the information, but also see all of the registered events that we are having online. This is all going to be available later. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have for our artist tonight. She's going to answer them at the end of the conversation. You can ask your questions by raising your hand using the reactions here button at the bottom of the Zoom. And you can also write your question in the chat. People who are also watching us on Facebook, you can do the same. Feel free to ask anything that you want to know about Tanja's practice. And we are going to address all of those questions at the end. You can ask them in English or Croatian. It is totally fine. We can then translate, so no worries about that. I hope you're going to enjoy this conversation. I'm going to now give floor to my colleague Jasmina.
Hello, everyone. I would like to introduce just shortly Tanja before we start with questions. So Tanja Deman is a visual artist from Split, working in the medium of photography, photo collage, video and installation in public space. She graduated from the Academy of Fine Arts in Zagreb, and her works have been exhibited in a large number of exhibitions in Croatia and internationally. We can talk about some of your specific projects, Tanja, later, but I would like to start with the situation we are in now. So you have been using the tourist agency as your open studio since Saturday. So can you tell us how was it and how did you find this particular space? How did you feel in it?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Jasmina and Marina and everybody who joined us tonight. It was a wonderful experience using the space, being in the Croatian Palace and working from this space every day. I encountered many interesting people and spoke with many people who interviewed many people, and I think that's going to be very valuable for the research that I'm conducting for a new project.
And what did you find the most challenging? I mean, it is a specific situation. It is not maybe the kind of space that you were used to work in. So
I didn't find anything challenging.
That's great to hear. Can you tell us maybe what was, is there some advantage of working this way? How do you usually work? Do you have your own studio?
I have a home studio, and I found that very convenient, that I don't have to go anywhere. Actually, I don't work much different than I worked here. I when I conduct the research, I talk to many people. So it's whether they come to my studio or whether I speak with them through Zoom or some other app, it doesn't really make a difference. So when you ask me, were there any challenges? No, there were not any challenges, and I just felt like continuation of the way I usually work.
Okay, and can you tell us more specifically what have you been working on now?
Yes, so I've been conducting a primary research for an idea for a new film. I would like to make an art documentary about the pollution of the Adriatic Sea with plastic. So I've been talking a lot with divers, with activists, ecology activists, with the scientists, but also with the citizens who came over spontaneously. And I think and I still have even extended interviews for the next week in plan after I leave this residency.
That's great. We saw here that you were quite busy. Your studio was always visited by people. You always had someone in. So it was great that this topic actually attracted so many different professions and, as you said, citizens as well. Since you are from Split, but maybe you haven't worked this way, or you didn't have a studio in the Diocletian's Palace until now, can you maybe tell us, did this few days change some of your perspectives that you have on your hometown, or how do you see, did it change, how do you see this specific place that you are in now? Before and now?
Well, I have to explain. I grew up and I still am based 3 minutes away from the studio. So for me, the Diocletian Palace was always a place of identification, a place of magnificent cultural heritage that I always admired. Also, a place as a playground. So it was a pleasure for me also to use it as a workspace for the first time in my life. I wouldn't say that it changed my perspective of the city or this part of the city. It more enriched my experience of the city.
Okay, and when did you started to address the ecological issues? When did you start to work more with this topic?
The most prominent entry into this topic was in 2015 in summer, late summer, when I decided to dive in the sea with my camera and start photographing underwater landscapes of the Adriatic. And my motivation behind that was the reason that in that same year, Croatian government wanted to split the Adriatic in certain economical zones for drilling oil and gas. And that motivated me to go underwater and to capture these landscapes, which are with those kind of activities directly threatened.
Well, a lot of artists nowadays choose to work in one way or another to address some of the burning issues regarding ecology. So how would you describe your approach to it, if you can maybe differentiate yourself somehow?
To be honest, I never thought of that, to think of myself as in a position from differentiating. So I really wouldn't know how to answer that question.
Okay, but let's go back also to some of your previous works where you were also inspired or attracted to a specific kind of spaces or landscapes. So as an artist and photographer, what kind of landscapes or spaces attract your attention the most?
Well, when it comes to landscapes, I think I was always drawing my inspiration from Dalmatia and from the areas around here, and later on from South Africa, where I spent a few years in between Europe and South Africa. And before I was more working in my works with architecture, and that were usually public spaces, so spaces of either for cultural use or for sports events or for administrative usage. So always publicly used spaces. And I was bringing nature inside of those spaces as a kind of need also for this urban environment to bring more nature inside of it in our collected spaces.
And yeah, in some of those works that you are talking about, you use also collages and some way of constructed images, sceneries that are often decontextualized or recontextualized, often changing the identity, purpose. And how do you see photography in that way as a tool to manipulate with this, with reality and illusion? And also, how do you see artistic research as a method in this process?
I see photography as digital painting in that sense. I don't look at it as a way of manipulating something, more as creating something entirely new. Because by using photographs of certain public buildings, and I'm just slightly referencing to it, but I'm completely changing the identity of those buildings and the purpose of their use. And how do I see artistic research? I see it as any other, as a scientific research. So I don't differentiate those two in any way.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you work with these people that are actually researchers scientific researchers in some field? For example, now when you are working with this specific topic with sea pollution, and you talk with divers and others and different scientists, so how do you combine, how do you, I mean, I'm also interested, how do you talk with them, and what kind of questions do you pose them? And then how do you combine those information with your aesthetical approach that is often quite very distinctive?
Well, I usually want to hear if they're not scientists, but for example, fishermen or divers or other type of people who spend a lot of time on the sea or inside of the sea. I usually want to hear their experiences. Some experiences which without having those professions, we have no chance of experiencing in our life. So they're sort of their stories are extension for me to understand some other worlds, which I cannot be there physically. And I just let them talk to share these important experiences to them and to share what's important for them and what they think needs to be communicated publicly. And when it comes to scientists, I usually ask them about questions which they're specialized in. Usually they also send me some scientific papers to further do the research. And or they direct me to some other scientists who are maybe better informed about certain topics.
And do you put something, or if you can maybe actually define that, do you put something personal in it? Because this is also my personal view, but I see some of your works in the same way as an intimate story, but also on the other hand, it is something that everyone can relate to. So it is some sort of like a collective intimacy. So what kind of personal do you bring in, if any? And how do you actually incorporate this together to make this?
I think you're asking me about Tom Horizon. So so firstly I didn't think that I would write the text for the film. But as I did the whole research, it felt a little bit daunting to whenever I asked for how to actually write a personal story with all that data in it. It just felt unbridgeable. And then I decided that I actually need to write that story, because for me, obviously, it wasn't bridgeable, because obviously that's some kind of logical way for me to, in an intimate way, to digest certain data and scientific information, and that came out very spontaneously out of me. So I didn't have to think too much how that's going to form into sentences of a personal story. I think everyday life is full of intimacy at the same time, and digesting all kinds of information that we get. So in that way, I don't see it separated one from the other.
Mm. And coming back to the ecology, how do you see our individual responsibility towards the collective one to connect with this? And what is the role of, I mean, this is the big question, of course. We don't have to answer it specifically, but I mean, I'm just wondering about your opinion. What is the role of artists in addressing this kind of issues, such as climate change?
I think we as an individual have absolute responsibility toward this, because we all live on this planet together, and I think it's extremely important that every person finds himself empowered to believe in self, that it can make a difference, because we do all as individuals can make a difference. And I think it's very important for artists to address these topics, because we are in the midst of ecological crisis. This is not getting any better. So this is like a hot topic right now, a state of emergency topic. So we should all be on board, whether we are bakers or artists or builders or mothers or uncles.
Yeah. And so I'm going back to the Horizon again, because this is one of your latest work, but this is also kind of a similar topic as what you are working on now. And in both of these works, you are actually bringing something local while addressing something global, let's say. So in Horizon, you are filming on the Croatian island, and now you're also talking with the local people here, but this is again used to address something much more bigger than that it is present here locally. So why do you choose global over local, and how do you incorporate those two? And actually, what is their relation in your work?
I think those relationships come sort of spontaneously to me. I think it also comes from my previous experience with photo collages, when I'm using these, again, public spaces. And in the same way, I'm obviously treating the environment as a big public arena. And when it comes to the sea, when you see some data, whether it's about overfishing, whether it's about sea pollution or some other topics, these numbers are so similar. Either we are in Adriatic or we're in Pacific or some other parts of the world. It's like the numbers are repeating. Like that's 90% of resources of the sea are exploited. Same thing, same numbers apply to Pacific and to the Adriatic. So we are living in global culture when it comes to ecological crisis. And these national borders don't really mean anything anymore in those sense.
Do you see your work can influence somehow some policy making, or do you ever go that far in your own thinking?
Well, I'm firstly going into thinking whether it will inspire someone. And I think we all can influence policymakers. It's only a matter of the numbers. And policies do change because of certain numbers always, and how much pressure we put on policymakers. So I think everything matters. Are you working in an ecological institution, NGO, or are you making an exhibition about something, or are you cleaning a beach and you invited schools to participate in that or something? That all adds up, and I think, and then it's only a matter of a critical point of how many numbers of these people added up.
Mm. And if you want to share it us, of course, only, what are your plans for the production of this new work that you've been working on now?
Well, I'm currently working on the idea, and I want to hear as many as possible stories, because that also enables me to create a certain experience from which I can then talk about specifically about the Adriatic Sea and as an underwater storage of garbage, and I will see through this research I will see which approach actually do I want to take. So currently it's in a very beginning of forming that idea, which direction I want to take. But I would definitely like to track what's happening on the shore with what's happening underwater, to give both of these views, because what's happening underwater is directly influenced with what's happening on the shore.
Mm. Do we have maybe some questions for Tanja at this point? Marina?
Yes, if I may. And feel free also to not give us full answers, because this is a work in progress, of course, but I'm kind of curious about what information did you get from our local audience here? Were they very much open to share their thoughts and their experiences on this topic with you? Or did you encounter any issues in the communication itself? Because maybe sometimes we can also recognize that people are maybe not aware of the issue itself. And by talking to them, did you discover that, or were the people very much open to share?
Well, those who came, they were obviously open to share. Those who didn't come, they were probably not open to share. But what I found out, and what somehow was reoccurring information, is that a lot depends on us locals, and that a lot of pollution comes from us locals as well, and that culture, that mindset needs to be changed, because it's just past tense mindset. It belongs to some other time, and I think it's extremely important that through education, children in schools and high schools, that these topics are addressed. And we share Adriatic with many other nations, and garbage of many other nations is mixed here. But the ones which is right the closest to our coast is mainly affected by us, Croatians. And to be specific, by unorganized garbage places on islands, which are open, close to the sea. With any big wind storms, the garbage gets into the sea. Also, unfortunately, locals throwing furniture into the sea once they want to renovate their houses or parts of when they are rebuilding the houses, all this material ends up also in the sea. Vehicles, etc., etc. And often it's maybe not even a matter of that they can't afford to store that, but they're just not informed where can they store all that garbage and who do they need to call. So the whole system is untransparent, and people, I think, are not informed. And I think as soon as people would be informed, that would also make their lives easier, and hopefully they wouldn't throw sofas in the sea in that case.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, you've already mentioned the education aspect. If we would invest a little bit more in there and try to even have some kind of an activities with combining also education, the formal one, with this informal one, and even interaction with the people like you, this might really encourage especially youth and kids to become aware in a very early age, and then to try to change these practices that we kind of have and never really modify because we consider it normal, or we kind of ignore what's happening, and we don't want to admit that this is happening here and it's always somewhere else. So exactly those kinds of work that you are doing, it's really great, because then it's kind of also, it's art, but it's also awareness raising factor, and it can really influence people to really become aware of what's happening.
Yeah. Thank you.
And do you work also internationally when doing these projects? Like, do you collaborate with international scientists or other artists somewhere else, or other organizations?
Well, for Film Horizon, I was mainly reading from publications from international scientists or international NGOs, and that was extremely helpful. So it was a combination of both. So information from Croatia and from the entire Europe and beyond. For this one, I'm sure it will be again, because it's much better to get more opinions. And of course, as I said, we're sharing this little patch of the sea with many other nations. So it's good to get the information from both sides, or not just both, from all sides.
And how difficult is to actually produce, to make the final product in terms of finding funding and getting all this data that you need, and actually putting everything into, like, technologically and mainly with funding, I suppose.
Well, Film Horizon was produced by Kreativni Sindikat, art house production film studio, and the money the film was financed by Croatian Audiovisual Center and by City of Split. So that's how it was covered. For this film, I will see how it will go based on where and how I want to produce it. So that's still fully open.
We have one question from the audience. Andrea, feel free to unmute your mic and ask.
Yeah, sorry, I cannot turn on my camera. It's some complications with it, but I wanted to ask, I saw your film, Tanja, in Galum, and what I kind of picked up from it also is this dealing with guilt and pain from just being human and witnessing everything that humans are doing to the environment. And I was wondering how you address that aspect also in your work or personally, or however you want to answer that.
Well, I have to say, at the end of the research for Film Horizon, I felt like I'm almost going through some kind of emotional illness because there is not really end to this. You know, one writer asked me, "So how is this going to end?" You know, and we made an impact on the planet Earth for the next hundreds and hundreds of years, and those are some big numbers to deal with in our very small lives. So I felt it was really emotionally hard at the end of that research for me to put text together about all of this.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? You can also ask in Croatian if you want. Tanja, I would like to ask you to invite people to visit you. You are here still tomorrow, the whole day. I mean, in 2 shifts that we are working in. So maybe you can, in the end, just ask them again and explain them what kind of people are you actually looking for and what kind of information.
Thank you. So tomorrow, Friday, is the last day of my residency in Dominisova 9, and I'm here from 10 until 1 and from 4 until 7. And I would like to invite everybody from Split who would like to share their story about the sea and sea pollution. And they're more than welcome to come to the studio and to have a chat with me. Thank you.
And for the end, I wanted to ask you again, how do you think that this residency was actually will make a difference for your research? Did it make you more approachable to people? I mean, did you have also any encounters that people were afraid to come in, or anything weird that happened? If you want to share with us.
I think it'll definitely make a difference. Well, now in this time of COVID, it allowed me a certain semi-public space for people to come. That certainly wouldn't happen at this time of the year in my studio. So that was fantastic. That was an excellent experience and very valuable.
There is the last question here in the chat. Is there a way that locals can connect with you beyond your being here after your residency is over? So how can they reach you in case they want to share something with you, but they are unable to come still tomorrow?
They can do that through my website, and there they can find my email and they can send me an email. That would be the easiest way to share a story.
And how long is that process going to take for you? Like how long in the period of time are you open for these new inputs that are coming in?
Like the inputs are open indefinitely.
Great. This is really good. And I really hope that people are going to react on this topic and that they're going to contact you. And even if they cannot join here, it was really nice to hear about your practices, about the topic that is relevant for everyone. So thank you for sharing. And Yasmina, if you want to say anything else to conclude this conversation.
Now, I just want to thank Tanja for actually participating in our project, and I'm very happy. We are all very happy to hear that it was great for you, and that was actually useful. And we are looking forward to see how it will continue after this. And thanks to everyone who joined on Zoom and on Facebook. And also tonight we have a larger audience here on the street as well. So thanks everyone, and join us for the next artist talk on Saturday, which will be with Tin Dozic at 7.
And we have a nice comment also here in the chat. Thank you very much for the nice words. Please follow all the events that we are having. There are really a lot. So the program is online, and please join and come and stop by to our info point here in Dominicova 3. Thank you very much for joining, and talk to you very soon. Next conversation is on Saturday. So follow us for the link to register. Thanks a lot. And good night.
I would like to thank Yasmina and Marina for this wonderful conversation and for inviting me to participate on this residency, and to everybody who came and visited me, and everybody who participated tonight in this talk. Thank you.